Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and I just discovered a Sally Rooney book in my bedroom. This is Conversations with Friends. I know that I unhauled Normal People last year. I have never purchased a copy of Conversations with Friends. I have no intention of reading Conversations with Friends, but whilst clearing off the dressing table behind me in preparation for this video, I found it. It's a good job I work at a charity shop, is all I can say. This is it. This is the 100th Woolgathering video. Videos in which I talk about nothing in particular. The very first Woolgathering video appeared on December the 9th, 2017. It currently has 40 views, was made for Vlogmas. I weighed about 6 stone more and I have a giant spot on my face if thou did choose to go in search of that video. The term woolgathering actually comes from a novel that I was planning years ago, and I started doing this with videos because I thought it's going to be a long time until I get the opportunity to write that novel, so I'll start using the titles in videos and it will create something of a brand. So Woolgathering was going to be a specific novel that I still don't know whether I'm going to write. It's the one that I realised at the time I was too young to write it. In this edition of Butcher's Dog magazine, mine is the second to last poem and it's entitled Woolgathering. I might share it at some point, but this is the first and only time I have ever managed to get a poem in print. It was also an idea to maybe use it as a title of a poetry collection at some point, I don't know. But as this is the 100th Woolgathering video, I did think that I would allow other people to decide the nothing in particular that I talk about. So I asked questions on Twitter and on Instagram as to what people thought I should discuss. And firstly, I'm going to mention Amy of Zoe Beck, who said maybe I should talk about the whole series of Woolgathering videos, like what I enjoyed about them or didn't like. The one thing that I've always appreciated is that it's very little work. When I first set out to make these videos, it was around the time that my computer had broken, and so I couldn't edit anything. From December 2017 really until July 2018, I wasn't able to edit videos, and I would record them and upload them straight to YouTube. One of the most embarrassing moments is when I had to blow my nose on camera. Also, back then in 2017, I had 200 subscribers. There were a lot fewer people, a lot less, a lot fewer. I don't know. There were fewer people then than there are now, so I didn't mind so much. Sometimes with Woolgathering, for me, there was a point where they were my most popular videos, where I was just expounding anything that came into my head. But recently, I think people come to BookTube looking for videos that are heavily about the books. Sometimes I'm a bit wary to record Woolgathering videos, and sometimes I will record a Woolgathering video now because back in the day I used to just record anything and upload it because it was a video and it was created and it was more content for the channel. And then I uploaded a video in August 2018 or 19. After I recorded it, I uploaded it, then I made it private, and then I uploaded it again, and there was just this question in my head as to whether I needed to share what I was sharing online. Well, it was me, but it wasn't the me I necessarily wanted to share online, and it was dealing with stuff that I don't feel needed to be shared. But then in the moment I thought, well, it's something that creates a narrative somehow between the Woolgathering videos, and it goes to show the whole breadth of human experience. There's nothing I really haven't liked about Woolgathering. One thing I do miss is getting to record in my car. It used to be that I get to work on a Saturday morning and I used to leave the house a lot earlier, but since I've become more comfortable driving, I'm not at work for so long before people start arriving because I leave later, and I also don't want to leave the house nearly an hour before I have to sit in the car park and record a video. I do miss that aspect, and sometimes I feel a bit wary when it comes to editing these videos because it feels like they were never really meant to be edited. But overall, I have really enjoyed having a part of the channel that is very much dedicated to just chatting and isn't about the books, and where it is a bit nonsensical and non-linear and all over the place, and it's easier, and I would recommend it. And hey, let's decide that I was the fourth, I was the one at the forefront of deciding to have chatty videos and naming them, rather than just naming them a chatty video. I ascribed something to them, and I let everyone know that if you were coming to that video, then you could expect nothing about books. Though sometimes books do slip through the net. From Two Titler Trek we have, I'd love to hear you talk about how your channel informs your writing. Does it spur you on, slow you down, or guide you to the books you read for inspiration? Actually thinking about it, I suppose through reviewing books and discussing them on the channel and recognising more what I like in fiction, it gives me an idea of what I don't want to do in fiction myself, and how I don't want to write necessarily. Similarly, I'll find stuff when I'm reviewing books that I think, oh, that's something I would like to try in future. And when I talk about the book that would have been Woolgathering, I read Flames by Robbie Arnott last year, and when I read that I thought, this is it. This is how I want to write that book. But as I say, I don't know whether that book is ever going to see the light of day. I suppose on the other side, when I write specifically the Doris books, I try to maintain a narratorial voice that sounds like natural speech. Sometimes I've noticed the way that Harold speaks has influenced the way that I will speak on this channel, and has influenced the way I speak in general. When Dane first started reviewing my books, he mentioned a lot, if you've ever heard Charlie speak on his channel, then you get an idea of what Harold's voice is. And that wasn't always the way. What had happened was I started spending so much time reading Harold and touring Harold around that I entered into this headspace whereby Harold just completely changed the manner in which I talk, which makes it very difficult when it actually comes to the writing. I think another thing that having the channel did was it perhaps changed the way I view my writing and what's being said. I think that when I first set out to write Doris, she was this very acidic, acerbic person with no real thought to consequence. And there are definitely some jokes in the first Doris book that I regret. And I suppose that from there, and from having the channel, I chose to actually take Doris on this journey where she recognises the bad she's done and tries to make reparations for that. And that was also informed by the channel. Also some of the things that I recognised about society and changes that we wanted to make. I wanted this book that was led by an older female character, and I wrote that. But something that I recognised is that there were a lot of female characters fighting against one another, and I didn't want it that Doris could have no female friends, which is why in the second book the relationship with Erin appears, and I strengthen the relationship between Doris and Edith, and I try and get rid of this idea that everyone is competing against each other. And that came from having this channel and recognising maybe not just the flaws in my way of thinking, but some of the flaws that have constantly permeated throughout fiction and film. We go to Mariam Moronsky first, who asked on Instagram, who was your main encourager, inspiration in being a reader / writer growing up? And then gave me an example. No one. The only other person who reads in my house is my mother, and she has always read Mills and Boon books. Being delightfully poor when I was younger, I have shared the story about the first book I ever owned many times, and how it was the fourth book in a series and we didn't realise, we thought it was a bind-up. It was more Charlie being arrogant that got me into reading, and it was the fact that it was cheap and we'd go to the library every week because the library was free and books from the library were free, and so we would leave our flat and walk into town, and the four of us would share a McDonald's breakfast, and then we would walk to the library and we would get out as many children's books as we could for 3 weeks, and then my mother would have the devil's own job to return them. So I could say that my mother helped because she took us to the library, but for the most part, the reason someone's playing music. Operatic music, good for them. Someone's actually got some culture on this estate. Anyway, when I was much younger, I held being smart. It's not opera. It's clearly something to do with football. This is the problem with making a video at this time of day. Everyone's starting barbecues on the bank holiday Monday. I chose not to leave the house today. I was going to take the little dog on a walk down the canal, and I chose not to leave the house because I knew that the canal would be crowded as anything. But yes, I was really arrogant as a child and held being smart to an incredibly high standard. And the way I thought you proved that you were smart was by reading a lot. And so I decided I was going to read a lot. And then a certain children's author who was popular in the late 90s and early 2000s revealed about living in council accommodation. And I thought, oh, so I can become a writer then. I was already creating stories, so it just seemed to work. And then someone on Instagram called Murder and Mayhem asked me what I've been watching on TV recently, and that continues to be Motherland. I found the pilot was on Netflix, so I watched that, and it really helped to see where everything had come from. There's also a link. If you watch that episode, then it connects well to the Series 2 finale, and I might be about to rewatch Series 3 again. I did start watching Drag Race Down Under, but I don't think I'm going to continue with that. For no other reason than with that show, I feel like you used to have some time to actually get to see the winner of one series go on and experience things and actually hold on to the crown. But now that so many different people are getting crowns all the time, it feels a lot like, oh, there's barely any time to breathe before the next winner's there. And whilst it's great that we're getting to see a certain type of drag popularised on the television, I feel like it's changed less. It's now less about the art of drag, if it ever was, and is definitely more about being a good reality star. That's just my 2 penneth worth. There was a time last year when I thought that Woolgathering would be a video I did every week, and I think for a time it was, and sometimes it was every 2 weeks. I made a decision when I first started that I never wanted a Woolgathering video to appear straight after a Woolgathering video, but sometimes I have taken breaks, and the only way to reacclimatise to recording seemed to be to have a Woolgathering video there. I think also these have become great videos for discussing what's going on in my life at a certain moment, for discussing sadness, which is something I never used to do. And then, well, I did it once, I talked about the period of unfathomable sadness in 2016, and then I started to ignore that that ever happened, because I feel like there are a lot of places on the internet where sometimes bleak things are mentioned in order to try and get a reaction. And I ignored that it had happened because it very much felt like a weakness. And for someone who writes comedy, it felt very stereotypical. Like, oh, this person's tried to be funny. It makes sense that they'd spend the rest of their time being sad. And also, because there is so much going on in the world that is awful, a lot of people are feeling a certain type of way. So it felt like you're not special to share that. And then last year, out of nowhere, well, not out of nowhere, everyone knows what's gone on in the last year, I felt sad again. Something happened and I felt the need to return to YouTube to say something. Then something else happened, i.e. my dog died. So I disappeared again. And I think I recognised last year, and I am a person who spends a lot of time in their own head, and I am a person who examines a lot of their thoughts, and I am a person who really, I enjoy my own company, and I am much more likely to feel a certain type of way, go insular and figure it all out, work everything out, and then come back to myself. But sometimes having a channel, I don't recognise that there are people inside of this booktube sphere who care. For whatever reason in my head, sometimes it feels incredibly virtual. And so I'll disappear as I disappear on my friends. See, if we knew each other in real life and we exchanged phone numbers and stuff, you would know that sometimes you can send me a message and not get a response for 6 weeks. And every day I'll be thinking, oh, I've got to respond to that. I just won't do it. I'll disappear and I won't converse, and then I'll come back and I'll try and behave as though that time hasn't passed at all. Because to me, it just feels like that. It feels like it's not been any time at all. Hi, how are you? But I forget that the internet moves incredibly quickly, and that just being gone from the internet for a week can be incredibly long. So when I disappeared for a month earlier this year, it was 2 bloody months ago, I disappeared for the entirety of March. When I did that, I wasn't really thinking about anybody else. I was just thinking about having time away, really, because I was feeling sad and I needed space. And I know I've mentioned this in every Woolgathering video and every vlog, because sometimes these things last longer than you expect them to. It was really unexpected when people started getting in touch to see how I was, because I hadn't uploaded. Naturally, I told them all I was fine, because my issues are my own, but that was a surprise. And I say that has been one of the weird things about BookTube, where I made the decision to create this channel on my own. Everything I have done on this channel has been on my own. I sometimes forget that there is a wider community out there, and sometimes by accident I think that I can end up distancing myself, because it's just who I am. I can be incredibly awful, and I always say about how I'm an awful human being, but I don't think people actually understand it. Let's stop being maudlin for a second and just admit that at the moment I'm fine, that I am content, that I am sure I'll be able to chat to some people again in future. At least I hope to. You know, there's every chance everyone could actually be done with me now. That this is the end. But really, it wouldn't be the first time, you know, like, let's talk about when I left high school. Oh, actually, we should talk about when I left high school because school leavings just happened. Some GCSE students left and some A-level students left, and I got reminded of my own like GCSE leavers day, knowing I was going back for sixth form on the same campus in a few months. And I remember this girl I'd known since I was 5, and she was crying, and she says to me, "Aren't you upset?" I said, "No, I'm going to be seeing you all again in 4 months." So that didn't go down well. And then a couple of years later, when we all left for A-levels and I wasn't crying then, like, well, quite honestly, like, I told you all months ago I thought you were only acquaintances. So no, I don't actually have any friends left from school. I have a few left from uni. I have a few from the writers group. I have a few at work. Actually, I'd recommend actually making a few work friends, because it wasn't until I started working with the over 50s that I recognised how easy it is to get drunk with the over 50s. Although since I lost weight, I must say that I do think that I actually shouldn't, that I should, you know, maybe, well, I don't drink much anyway. Oh well. Anyway, last week at work, I want to brag, got The Pull of the Stars by Emma Donoghue, hardcover, and The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. Admittedly, I was waiting for these 2 books to come in, and in terms of The Vanishing Half, I read The Mothers before most other people on BookTube were reading Brit Bennett, and I didn't like The Mothers, but The Vanishing Half came out and everyone jumped on her. I didn't like the first book, so I wasn't about to pay full price for the book. It just wasn't. I'm not going to deny that. There's probably a review somewhere from back in the day. But that was another thing that I recognised whilst I took this time off, was that I probably don't... I think I'm reaching the point where I've realised what I want to be reading and what I want to be giving my time to. And some of the fiction that I was reading definitely was something I was reading because BookTube. And I was denying myself all of these backlist books that I wanted to read. I mean, I still haven't read them. I'm currently reading Dancer from the Dance by Andrew Holleran, and I want to finish that today because it's the end of May and I don't want to carry it into the next month with me. Actually, I've got plans for the next month as to what I want to read. Do you want to see a TBR? I might record one if I can be bothered. This is one of the things that I've always liked about Woolgathering, how lackadaisical they can be, how all over the place they can be, and you have to cope with it, not me. I mean, I have to edit it later and watch it, but still. Writing-wise, I didn't get much writing done last week, simply because I had overtime because it was my colleague's birthday. So I was in Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. And when you only have 2 days off to try and get everything done, it doesn't really lend itself to getting much writing done. I think I managed to get 2 or 3 pages written. It's tough, and I know I've said that it's tough a lot with this book. I've never tried to write the last book in a series before. I've never made it this far when writing a series before. I've always usually teetered off. So probably publishing the first Doris book was beneficial because it meant that I had to stick to getting these books out. But it's tough because you're wrapping up things. And I'm recognising that once this book is edited and once this book is out into the world, that's it with Doris. And it's particularly scary to think about going and writing with other characters, because I feel like for the entirety of my 20s, Doris has been something of a safety net, because Doris has felt something like something that I know and I understand, and I can do this story because I get it. It's been great because it's meant that I can throw Doris into different situations, and it's been a way of experimenting with my writing with this character. But at the same time, it felt like being stuck in a box because it was this one character for nearly 10 years. And yes, I've gone off and I've written other things, but my primary focus has been this character. And yes, she's only been my primary focus since 2014, despite the initial idea happening years before. But it can be scary when I think that I'm going to have to finally write about those different characters and situations that I've had in my head for years. At the same time, I think maybe other people will be glad, because series, as a reader, series can be difficult to get into because they can have been going on for a while. And it's nice sometimes just to have a book to read and say, right, that's it, I'm done now. Maybe it'll be nice for them to see what else I can do. I will say one thing that happened. We finally had a copy of An Heir to Murder donated to the charity shop. And I don't know whose copy it was because it's not signed. Sometimes friends or other people on YouTube who watch my channel and know me, who purchase my books, feel wary of sharing the knowledge that they've read my book and not liked it, because I think they worry that it will affect our friendship or relationship in some way. Indeed, I've actually had people who I felt quite close to read my book, and as soon as they did that, that was it. They stopped because I either wasn't as good a writer as they expected, or they just didn't like the book. It wasn't for them. I find myself having to repeat to a lot of people, just because you know me doesn't mean you're obligated to read my work. Sometimes there are people who know me who I explicitly don't want them to read my work. There are some YouTubers I watch, some booktubers, who I like to think that whilst I'm not close to, we have some sort of, not working relationship, that sounds awful. Affinity? I don't know. There are some people on BookTube that I think have read my book and they know me, and it's affected the conversation because it's made them think differently of me. But hey, it's also weird because I think in terms of reviewers, I've always been a person who can take a negative critique and who always knows that every time I'm being critiqued, it's usually someone trying to help me. But I think when someone knows you, they don't want to share those opinions, and because they're worried. And I'm like, it's a critique of the writing. It's not a critique of me. I can recognise that. I am quite capable. Also, when you have 4 siblings that you know of, you gain something of a thick skin. I won't lie. Side note, to reiterate, I did replace my heart with a bread oven in 2007, so it is somewhat difficult to offend me. Don't take that as a challenge and try, but know that I can cope with criticism. If you haven't liked my book, that is fine. I'm not going to come after you. I'm not going to start sending letters to you. I'm not going to find out your address and come and harass you because, frankly, I don't have the time. I don't drive for long distances and I don't have the petrol money. But please do donate the copy to your nearest charity shop, thrift store if you're American. Maybe even use it on a fire to keep you warm. I don't mind. We're all green round here. Although, is burning books for warmth still eco-friendly? Answers on a postcard, please. I think that I've talked for long enough about nothing. There is really barely anything going on in my life at the moment. Apart from work. I get my second dose of the vaccine this Friday. I feel particularly woeful about the state of humanity who, because they've let go of a few regulations, have decided that they can just get as close as they want to each other. It seems really just trying to do themselves harm, really. So I despair of them. Because once again, it makes me wary to leave the house and go near them. But hey, I think what I might do is just get up extra early tomorrow morning and drive me and Sally up to the forest and just do a trek around there without anybody around. Sounds like a plan. Or I'll get up and ask my dad to drop me off at his field and walk around there so that I don't have to worry about folk. If you want to talk about anything I have mentioned in this video, please feel free to do so in the comments. I hope that you got something out of this video, even if it was sheer boredom. And until next time, that is all.